In this class, we look at a few best practices on reflective writing, and because this is our last lecture class, we'll look at the journey so far. When it comes to reflective writing, something you want to keep in mind is don't just create a summary of what you've done in this class. So for instance, in your writing class, don't just summarize all the activities you've done. What's important in reflective writing is your reaction to analysis and analysis of the writing process, and this is true about any piece of reflective writing. So if you're doing a piece of reflective writing on a video you've watched, your reflective writing should be a reaction to an analysis of the video, and not just a summary of what you've seen in the video. Uh, this is this famous quote that says, "God is in the details, good writing is also in the details." Include as many specific details as you can. When you're writing about something like learning, and especially when you're writing about learning in an intangible subject like writing, it's very easy to just talk in abstract terms. But for your reader to really understand your reflective writing essay, it's important that you mention as many specific details as possible. Think about it like you're telling your friend the summary of a movie. You tell them the most important scenes, give them the highlights, describe the most important things that happen in the film, so that there's a clear arc of the movie with these highlights in between. Similarly, highlight all the specific details. Talk about, for instance, which activities helped you the most. Was it peer response? Was it the drafting process? Talk about specific units that you found interesting. Did you like writing the personal essay? Did you like writing the research essay? What did you find challenging? Was it the soundtrack essay? Also talk about specific activities. We've done a host of activities. We've done reading responses, we've done class discussions around videos, we've done class discussions around specific questions about writing. We've done peer reviews, we've done the drafting process where we've written 2 drafts of each essay. So of all these processes, which ones were the most challenging, which ones helped you grow as a writer? Include all those details which are specific to the 112 class. Always write your reflection based on the context. So if your context is the writing class, keep this writing class and the goals of this writing class in mind when you're writing a reflective writing piece. So if you're writing a reflective writing piece based on a fiction class, keep the goals of that fiction class in mind. If you're writing a reflective writing piece based on a movie class or based on a music class, keep the goals of that movie class, the unit class in mind as you're writing a reflective writing piece. So always keep the context of what you're reflecting on before you write your reflecting piece, or as you revise your reflecting piece. Your voice as a writer is very important. I should be able to clearly see your distinguished voice as a writer as you write the essay. It should not be a generic essay on writing by a writer. It should be a specific reflection on writing by a specific writer. I should be able to clearly tell your essay that this essay belongs to you. So for that, you should spend a lot of time analyzing the essay and also a lot of time articulating your analysis, so that I can clearly see your personality and your voice as a writer. What were the precise struggles and challenges you faced? What were the triumphs you faced? What was it that frustrated you? What was it that really made you happy about this course? So your voice as a writer is what really makes a reflective writing piece stand apart. Try and include a few before and after facts. What you're trying to do here is talk about how you found this class helpful, or what are your thoughts on this class. So a before picture: what was your stance in writing before the class? What kind of writing did you do? Include a few anecdotes maybe, or a few facts on what kind of writing you did. What were your fears about writing? What did you think your strengths in writing were before the class? And what kind of writing experience did you have before? Did you take any other writing classes? Try and include those kind of before information, so the reader knows what kind of a mindset you came with. What was the mindset with which you came into this class? Try and include that in your introduction, and also have an after section in your conclusion. By an after section, I mean talking about where will you actually implement what you've learned in this class. so that there is this future-looking, forward-looking feel to your essay, so that you know there is an open door. The door to learning has not been shut, but would continue even after the class is ended. So these are five writing best practices you can keep in mind when you're writing a reflective piece. You can extrapolate them to any reflective piece that you're writing going forward, and it's good to keep them in mind as you look at my feedback and your peers' feedback and prepare to revise your essay. So the journey so far, it's been just 10 weeks, but we've done a lot of activities in these 10 weeks. You've written 4 distinguished essays. You've written a personal essay. You've interacted with an academic text, and a difficult academic text. Susan Sontag is one of the most. It's a very rewarding essay. It's a beautifully written essay, but it's one of the most challenging essays to respond to purely because of its scope and the density of its prose. You've added to an academic conversation, a research conversation, by writing a research essay, and you've also in Unit 4 reflected on a personal essay, and you've written these 4 essays in 10 weeks. You've understood a new writing process where you know that you as a writer should always keep your readers and the subject you're writing in mind, and you should also keep the context. So what is the specific writing prompt? What are the conditions, the constraints you're writing to? In the real world, when you go outside, when you're writing in organizations, when you're writing in other academic essays, you will always have a context. There'll be specific constraints and specific conditions imposed, and you need to write keeping those in mind. And at the same time, you need to keep your subject and your reader in mind. So you realize writing is not about just taking a topic and writing your essay, but you've written 4 really good essays, keeping the reader, the context, and the subject in mind. You've tailored your writing and improved your writing by taking time out to look at the various resources, which is the lectures, the readings that we have done. You've looked at the feedback given both by your peers and by me. A lot of you have noticed, and I'm pleased to notice, that you've experimented and improved the structure and organization of your essay. Some of you have also thought about the circulation, on where else can your essay appear. You realize that this piece of writing need not be limited to this class. You can give it a wider audience. And you've been avid readers yourself. You've acquired ideas about yourself as you write. A lot of you, when I was reading your Unit 4 first draft, have said that this class has been a process of self-discovery, where you've discovered a lot about yourself, qualities about yourself as a personality and not just as a writer. You've also understood that your stylistic choices and your structural choices can influence your writing. You looked at different ways of approaching content in your research paper. You've included quotes, you've included summaries. In your Unit 2, you've selected a specific perspective in Sontag's essay and responded to that. We've built a strong writing community. You've realized that feedback need not just be about criticism, but it's also important to acknowledge the good things a writer has done, because writing an essay with all these constraints is not an easy job, and when somebody does something good, they deserve to know what it is that they've done good in that piece of writing. You've also done the drafting cycle. You've revised each essay, taken it through 2 drafts. You've not just used the peer feedback, but also the learning from the reading responses and from the videos we watched. You've used that learning also to improve your essay across drafts, from one draft to the other, and also to improve your writing from one essay to the next. I would just like to before we give you a few final tips, we also noticed in our last class that what you've learned in this class has practical applications in the real world outside. I would urge you to go through these. I've uploaded the PowerPoint version of this class. I would urge you to go through these practical real world applications of what you've learned in this class, just to know that in 10 weeks you've learned an incredible amount of skill sets that will find a real world application. So I'd like to just leave you with a few tips before we conclude the class. One is, and these are generic writing tips which you can use in any essay you're writing across any subject. One is, read your essay out loud. Read it out slowly and listen attentively. And whenever you feel that a particular sentence doesn't quite sound right, try rewording the sentence by bringing the subject to the front. What I mean is, if you're writing about an activity, then bring the verb related to that activity to the front. So if you're writing about singing, bring the word singing right to the front of your sentence. Similarly, if you're writing about an individual, bring the individual to the front. So if you're writing about a dancer, so say the dancer, have the word the dancer right to the beginning of your sentence. What this does is it makes your sentence active, and by an active sentence, it's something which it reads better than a passive sentence where your subject is to the end of the sentence. Try and add a few more words for completion, because sometimes we try and write in the manner in which we converse, but it's important that each sentence stands on its own and gives its own context, and you need to do that without repetition of previous points. So add a few more words which have not been used before to make each sentence complete. In terms of grammatical and word choices, use the Penguin Handbook to fix issues. Go to specific sections. The Penguin Handbook is very neatly divided, and it's therefore very easy to use. So the key over here is to read your own sentence out loud. Revision is very important. Never let if you have a paper that's due somewhere, never let your first draft be your final draft. Most of the famous writers have always said that 70 to 90% of your writing happens during the revision process. So keep your deadline in mind and make sure that you write your first draft early on, so that you have at least a couple of days to write your revised draft. Which brings me to the next point. Don't revise your essay as soon as you write it. It's important you put your essay aside at least for a few days and then go back to revising it, because then you look at your own writing with a fresh pair of eyes. When you put your essay aside for a few days, your essay becomes a fresh piece of writing. If you try and critique it as soon as you've written it, the sentences are too fresh in your mind, the language is just too fresh in your mind, so you cannot really do a fair process of critiquing your writing. So like I said, keep your deadline in mind, write your first draft early on, so that you have at least a day or two between, so that you can put your essay aside at least for a day or two and then start revising it. If you cannot put your essay aside for a couple of days, at least make sure you have a few hours between your first draft and the revision process, and for those few hours don't even look at your essay. Completely put it aside and don't even think about it, so that when you go back to it, it's like looking at a fresh piece of writing. Read avidly. It's important to read because you keep an active dialogue with language when you read, which is the result of that is when you write, there is a clear flow of words. A lot of times when you write your essay, you face this problem wherein you have a thought in your mind but you feel you're not able to articulate it, and that happens because you've not engaged in an active dialogue with words. The best way to engage in an active dialogue with words is to read avidly. I would encourage you to watch this video. I've also uploaded it as a web link in the classroom. It's a scene from the film Detachment. I would say I would like you to excuse me for the profanity of language in the video, but I think the message that the video conveys is very important, which is why I've decided to include the video despite the language in the film. Just one of your for a few seconds, the language is kind of profane, but other than that, the message on reading that the film conveys is really powerful. And lastly, keep writing. I would highly recommend this book called 50 Writing Tips. I will email you the Amazon link to this book. It gives you 50 writing tips, describes each tip in detail, and gives you a few practice exercises on that tip. Just do one tip a day. It will not take you more than 10 minutes. Every morning, just do one tip a day. And at the end of 50 days, start the cycle again. Begin again from the first tip and plow through all the 50 tips. You will notice that by the time you finish 3 iterations, so by the time you do each of the 50 tips 3 times, you would have made a world of improvement in your writing in terms of style, structure, and grammar, and also innovation of thought. So you can make a world of difference to your writing in approximately 150 days or 4 months. Also try and have a critique, somebody who reads your pieces and gives you feedback, because having a fresh pair of eyes, like you noticed in your peer reviews, having a fresh pair of eyes look at your writing and give you feedback is one of the most helpful ways of improving your writing. So with that, we come to an end of this class. All the very best. It was wonderful sharing a virtual classroom with all of you. Just keep writing, continue writing and building on the skill sets you've learned in this class. Each of you, and I say this in all honesty, each of you has some very, very unique strengths as a writer. Each of you bring some very interesting life experiences that inform your writing. So make sure that you keep writing and build on these writing, and most importantly, you make sure you build on your unique voice as writers. All the very best.